this thing going? All right. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing fine. I'll call the meeting to order, so feel free to finish your conversations. Just want to, as a reminder for everyone, as you're speaking or asking a question, make sure that you use the microphones and that the little light is green when you speak into it. And you can do that by just pressing the button. What that does is it allows the people who are watching on the streaming version of this meeting be able to hear you. So just keep that in mind that we have folks tuning in virtually with us today. So make sure that they can hear you through the microphones. I think we're scheduled to end at about 12:30 today. We have a few breaks. Or we have a break scheduled, so try to work around that break if you can, but also understand that you may have some other issues, so that's fine. Just keep the fact that we have a break scheduled in mind. We're also going to rearrange the agenda just a little bit, so I may switch a few things around just for some personal requests that some of the presenters have. Hopefully you have already downloaded any documents for the meeting from the SharePoint site. If in the future you have issues or problems with that, contact Eiler and she can help you get access as you need. And then if you'll remember from the last meeting, Commissioner Thomas was talking about some task groups that were dealing with some federal legislation, and next Monday, Eiler's going to send the board an email that asks you to sign up for one of these task forces. All right? Now, I know you're already on a committee. The committee is a requirement of the board. Everybody's assigned to one of the committees. The task force is optional, so you don't have to sign up for this, but we would encourage you to, and we want you to choose one that maybe you have the most passion about. One of those options is going to be an assessment of the Tennessee Workforce System Program Evaluation. So that's one option. Another one is a WIOA Reauthorization Task Group, and that's going to that one's going to focus on recommendations that Tennessee is going to make to that national conversation about suggested improvements to WIOA. So if you have a passion about that, would love you to be part of that task group. And then there's a third option that deals with infrastructure, and they're going to be discussing ways to advance federal policies in the Tennessee workforce. So look for that email from Eiler on Monday. Would encourage you, if you have a passion for one of those three tasks, to be a part of that and give your input and voice so that we as a state can advance the systems with which we work a lot. We have a new member that I want to introduce to you, Joe Baker, is sitting right here, and he lives here in the Nashville area, but his home, we'll say, is over next to me in East Tennessee, and so I encourage you to get to know him and introduce yourself to him and welcome him to the board. So thank you, Joe, for being committed to be with us. So, all right. What else do I want to talk about? I think we're ready for roll call. So Eiler, take it away.
Good morning. As I call your name, please use a microphone to confirm your attendance audibly. If you are a member of a local workforce development board, please state the local board. If you are representing by proxy and your name is not called, please state your name for the record. Natalie Alvarez. Martha Axford.
Here.
Brandy Faust for State Senator Paul Bailey. Assistant Commissioner Jay Baker.
Present.
Joe Baker.
Here.
Jason Bates.
Present.
Tim Berry.
Here.
Joey Barnett for State Representative Clark Boyd. Deputy Commissioner Sherelle Campbell-Street for Commissioner Clarence Carter.
Here.
Billy Dykes.
Here.
Michelle Falcone.
Present.
Ben Ferguson.
Jason Bates, proxy.
Bill Godwin.
Present.
Marshall Graves.
Present from Southeast.
Ann Hatcher. Rick Isaacson.
Present.
J. Paul Jackson. Chief of Staff Jermaine Freeman for Mayor Tim Kelly.
Here.
Director Sharita Allen for Commissioner Stuart McWhorter.
Present.
Policy Director Tony Nicknajad for Governor Bill Lee. Mayor Mike Pogriba.
Present.
Stuart Price.
Present.
Barry Ray. Jason Schmidt.
Present.
Assistant Commissioner Deborah Knoll for Commissioner Penny Schwinn.
Matthew Spinella, proxy.
Deputy Commissioner Dwayne Scott for Commissioner Denise Thomas.
Present.
Jeff Vance.
Present.
Kevin Vaughn.
Present.
Rusty Vi. Ron Wade.
Present, Greater Memphis.
And Assistant Commissioner Kevin Wright.
Present.
As a reminder, for any votes during this meeting, you must recuse yourself if there is a conflict of interest. Chairman Barry, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Eiler, and again, thank you for everyone's participation, and especially coming in a little bit early this morning for the unemployment insurance system review. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but first, let's hear from Deputy Commissioner Scott.
Good morning, everyone. Commissioner Thomas is at a retreat this weekend with the governor, with other commissioners, so I'm here in her stead, okay? First, let me share with you some staffing changes within the Department of Labor. We have a new addition to our team, Brianna Moore. Is Brianna here? Can she stand up? Brianna's not here? Okay. Brianna worked with the Department of Labor previously in the workforce services area, left and went to economic development, and then came back to us. She comes back to us in the chief of staff, chief strategy role. She's taking over the Office of Reentry, so that's going to come under her responsibility, and really all the major initiatives that have to do with across our different departments within the Department of Labor, and really outside that, she's going to be responsible for making sure we got good coordination and keep momentum going there. So we're anxious, we're delighted to have her, and we welcome her to the team. We have a sort of bittersweet change in staff. Holly Freehofer, would you stand up, please? So, see Holly back there waving. So Holly is getting ready to leave us, okay, and we're sad about that. She's done a tremendous job in standing up the our state apprenticeship program and Apprenticeship Tennessee. She's been a key role in that for us. She will be going to Northeast State Community College as the Vice President of Workforce. So we want to congratulate her on that move. We're like I said, it's a bittersweet. We'll still stay connected with her. Jessica Barnett will be the new Director of Office of Apprenticeship. Is Jessica here? Okay, all right, doing the job, that's right. And Shalonda Shaw will be the Deputy Director of Office of Apprenticeship. Is Shalonda back there? Okay, good. So one thing that Holly's done an excellent job of is the successional planning. I mean, so Jessica is going to step right in. We won't miss a lick there, but we're going to miss Holly, and we appreciate all she's done for the department, okay? You're welcome. Okay. Each year, the governor's office secures governor's fellows, which are really the best of the best in the state with talent in respective areas. This is the first year that the Department of Labor submitted a proposal for a fellow, and we received a fellow on our first time out the gate, which was really neat. I was told that was sort of unique. But Catherine Rickenberger, is Catherine here? Catherine's not here, okay. So she will be joining us to really to work with us on different initiatives within the department. We've got several initiatives as relates to data across all departments. She will be involved with that with us, and we're excited to have her on the team. Steve Plale, I know you guys know Steve Plale. Stand up, Steve. Where are you? Behind me, okay. Big Steve, all right. Steve is our Assistant Commissioner for Workforce Development, and he's leaving us, but only temporary. Let me qualify that, okay? Steve, this is his last day until August 1st. Steve is getting ready to fulfill a lifelong bucket list, and he's been accepted, and he's going into the Tennessee Army National Guard. How about that? Isn't that neat? He's got a 10-week basic training he's going to go into, and we'll see how he looks when he gets back here. All right? But we're excited about him. James Robertson is going to serve as our interim assistant commissioner. You guys know James. He's been in the department a good while, so we congratulate and wish Steve the best as he fills this bucket list and serves our state and country, okay? Some agency items I want to sort of share with you. So the department continues to participate in a workforce that the governor established between economic development and workforce. And the Commissioner Thomas and Commissioner McWhirter co-chair that task force. And really the shared goal of that task force is to raise the labor participation rate within the state. And what they've talked to Governor Lee about, and he agreed about assembling this task force, is that it's a state issue. Almost every department of the 23 departments within the state, labor participation and workforce is part of their all. So this really brings that group together. There's some really good things coming out of that. Commissioner Thomas will be sharing that in the months ahead. Already there's a data subgroup that's been created, and what's getting ready to come out of that is a dashboard for the entire state workforce development that includes everyone. So that's going to be one of the first pieces coming out of that. So we'll be sharing more on that as it comes about. Commissioner Thomas is also participating in a convening in the national WIOA in D.C. Matter of fact, she was there this week, the early part of this week in D.C., representing the state of Tennessee. And it was on a discussion on really visioning for this whole WIOA program and partnerships. It was mentioned earlier by Chairman Berry. WIOA reauthorization was one of those topics that was discussed, and more coming out of that as well. And really what the role of this board needs to be as they come out of what the vision is for the federal coming out of D.C., and more information to come on that. We also are about to enter into July 1st a comprehensive assessment of our American Job Centers, okay? And that's going to look at the mobile job centers, the brick and mortar, and also the virtual. That's going to be a key piece as we go into the future of how we deliver these services to the citizens of the state of Tennessee, and that's the connection point. And so we're going to have a third party come in, already contracted there. It'll start in July, and then we will actually put in our action plan and strategy coming out of that assessment. So look for information coming from that. And then one last item is we've got in August, there's going to be a convening. There is a tremendous, matter of fact, there's more dollars than any department coming out through infrastructure. TDOT, you'll see that as well. And there's a significant amount of workforce tied to the TDOT infrastructure dollars that's coming. So we are connecting with them from the standpoint of how we collaborate, some grants and things coming on that line, along that line, to really use that as an additional pipeline into the workplace to sort of do what we do, and that's help more citizens in the state of Tennessee, increase the economic prosperity in their household. That's really what we do and why we exist, so there'll be another avenue to do that. And Chairman Berry, that's the update.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Good. That's a lot of good information. I appreciate that. That's good. All right. Next, let's get an update on employment security from Assistant Commissioner Rusty Feltz. Yep.
Thanks, everybody. Billy Dykes asked me earlier if I was going to sing, so if I'm going to do that, I got to have a microphone so everybody can hear me. So thank you for having me this morning. For those who don't know me, I'm Rusty Feltz. There's a lot of you guys, friendly faces, that have seen me and supported me through the last 2 or 3 years and my unemployment insurance program and all we've been through. But it's nice to report a lot of excitement around my program right now. As Chairman Berry mentioned, there was a demo this morning of our new benefits project that is coming in February of next year. And there's a lot of excitement around that because of where we've been with our program in the last few years. We have found there to be some issues with accessibility to our customer base, whether that be the employer the employer field of 170,000 employers in our state, or the claimants, either one. And so we're excited about that. All things are green lighted with that project right now, and we look to be on time with that. So I'll segue right into the next good news for our program, in that we recently did an RFP for our tax project to replace our 45-year-old mainframe system that our employer accounts unit uses. And that RFP has come back, has been awarded, and right now we are working with our partners with STS and CPO and finally the Comptroller's Office, where we're looking to get that finalized and be able to announce the vendor who won that. So we'll keep everybody posted on that. The next thing that comes right along with new program implementation, development, and work is a couple of laws that recently passed in this state. One concerning the indexing of unemployment benefits, where it will not just be a certain amount for 26 weeks anymore. It will actually be based on the unemployment rate at the time, and where that will change at different periods. So there's a lot of questions around that and how we'll handle those things, how we'll build it into the system. And then finally, a national program of interest, the shared work program. I think there's about half the states in this country right now that are doing some form of that, where instead of laying a certain part of a workforce entirely off, a company may do the percentages and say, I'll work everybody this many hours, and then everybody will be eligible for this amount of benefits, so that they don't lay their workforce off and lose a trained employee. I will say that we have a lot up in the air about that program that we as a state need to learn, and our program needs to learn as we learn to administer that. Because, take for instance, the state of Arizona is about the same size as us as far as the number of population, number of covered employers. They have about 920 participating employers in their state that do the shared work program. But you take a neighboring state such as Arkansas, and I think there's a small percentage of that. It could be 20. So it just really depends on the state, how it's pushed, the employer-based and their interest level. So we'll keep everybody abreast of that as well. Finally, we continue in to combat in the fraud arena. We'll be applying for a national grant that could possibly give us over $5 million to continue that fight in the fraud effort. Identity verification is still a big issue in our program, and I'll segue into something that involved our state here recently, and that is the Disaster Unemployment Assistance Program that the federal government approved through TEMA. That was for the 10 counties that were affected because of the tornadoes. Out of 280-something applicants, I think 240-something were actually proven to be fraudulent attempts against the program. So I said all that to say this. While some of the pandemic programs that the federal government put in place were very, very beneficial to our workforce that needed them, those federal programs also opened the door greatly for fraud attempts. So that's something that we'll be continuing to approve. And I just want to give a shout out to, twice a year, we have a UI Advisory Council meeting. In those meetings, we have people from across the state in some very important roles that represent both our workforce and our employer base. And we had a really good meeting this morning. I think Billy Dykes would agree with that. A lot of good topics discussed and a lot of good planning and working together, which I know Deputy Scott and Commissioner Thomas always like to hear. Complete transparency and partnership. Does anybody have any questions for me? Not like it was a couple of years ago, right, Chairman Barry? All right, thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you, Rusty. I appreciate that. And I'm sure you appreciate the lack of questions. All right. I'm going to switch a few things around. Next, we want to hear from Sherelle Campbell-Street, who's the Deputy Commissioner, and she's going to give us some updates on child care and TANF.
Thank you, Eiler. Good morning, everyone. I would like to say first, thank you, Chairman Barry, for moving things around. My only daughter, my only child, will be graduating high school tomorrow, and my husband's family is coming in. I'm going to just let that sit. I love him. Okay, Commissioner Thomas asked me to just present to our wonderful workforce board and stakeholders just a quick update on what's going on at the Department of Human Services in regards to TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, the TANF Opportunity Act, and what we are doing as a department around workforce and child care. So I will start, oh, thank goodness I don't have to press a button. This is our commissioner, Commissioner Clarence Carter. A little bit quickly about Commissioner Carter, if you've never met him. I often tease him that he really should have been a minister, and because he likes to pontificate about everything involving the United States safety net. And one of the things that he has charged the department in doing is reimagining how we serve our customers. Now, most of you probably know that the Department of Human Services embarked on a transformative way of doing things maybe about 10 years ago. We started this. It was called the 2-Gen approach. Some of you are shaking your heads. You probably heard of 2-Gen. Out of that work, we were fortunate to welcome Commissioner Carter, who really wanted us to up our game around 2-Gen. From that, the TANF Opportunity Act was born. He really wanted us to look at not only just looking at how we serve our customers, but how we engage in workforce, how we engage with people from the community, nonprofits, and the federal partners. And there is a real big reason that you'll see here in a minute as to why, as a country, but particularly as a state, we really do need to look at and come up with better strategies to serve those people who may be experiencing poverty at different and varying levels. So what does that mean as for us? The Tennessee Department of Human Services is taking action to serve as a catalyst in redesigning a fragmented, siloed safety net through a shared vision of transforming Tennessee. Now, all of this basically says we are going to partner, or we are partnering with people on steroids. We're not just looking at state departments or our federal partners to assist us in really reaching to the core purpose of why people are experiencing poverty or are out of work. Because, next slide, please. This is why. This slide demonstrates all of the programs federally that has a hand in dealing with some form of the human condition. We have programs in this nation that are duplicative. Imagine that. This slide shows you, and this was actually commissioned by Congress. They wanted to know, how are we showing up for our citizens and really assisting those who are experiencing hunger, who are experiencing joblessness. You name the human condition, there is a department or program in the United States that deal with it, to the tune of $1 trillion a year. Yes, we need to reimagine the safety net. So, hey, Tennessee is again at the forefront of that. Through legislation, the TANF Opportunity Act was born. Through this legislation, we established a Families First Advisory Council. Why is this important? Because the council member is made up of people who have actually been on public assistance and who have transitioned off public assistance. It is also made up of legislators, State Department heads, community leaders. And it was through this venture that they decided that we really want to impact communities differently. So we actually, as a part of this, selected 7 grants that would be transforming Tennessee through pilots. There are 7 grants, and here's a list of them. What was very important to this council is that these services that will be offered touched all 95 counties. So we have Family Matters, West Tennessee, the University of Memphis, West Tennessee, Family and Children's Service, Middle Tennessee, Upper Cumberland, HRA, Middle Tennessee, First Tennessee Development District Foundation, East Tennessee, United Way of Greater Knoxville, East Tennessee, Martha O'Brien, which is our internal pilot, serving Middle Tennessee primarily. In addition to that, there were 17 Family First community grants that were awarded. Each of those 7 grants, and we'll get into Martha just quickly, each of those 7 pilots were awarded $25 million based on a proposal they presented to the council that dealt with more than just a cash benefit. If you know anything about TANF, that's the purpose, really one of the first purposes of TANF is to distribute cash benefits to our families. Very transactional. You come in, you get a benefit. You leave, see you next month, you get a benefit. We really wanted to move past that and get to the core reason as to why people were coming to us in the first place. That's where the pilots will come in. They're looking at the human condition for their particular areas and helping people move past their center at the moment of poverty. The community grants also do the exact same thing, but on a smaller scale. We are very fortunate and happy that Governor Lee has championed this legislation, and we will have another round of community grants getting ready to open. So look out for it on our website in the coming month between now and June. Martha O'Brien, just wanted to highlight the legislation gives DHS a little bit of grace, and we have our own pilot, and selected Martha O'Brien. And really what they will be doing is working with 32 organizations to deal with different aspects of why people are currently experiencing poverty. And then in 7 counties, the goal is by the end of the year, they will be working with 900 families to move them beyond the benefits cliff. I'm assuming everyone knows what the benefit cliff is, but just a quick Sherelle, Southern Georgia way to say it is, what our data suggests is that a lot of people are working, but they're working to an extent that they cannot miss one paycheck. If they do, they will be below the poverty line, and we don't want that. even if they were to get more education, that kicks them off of a benefit. So, for instance, child care. We run the child care subsidy program. If someone goes from an LPN to an RN, if you look at the amount of money, depending on the county, it may be just $50 to $100 more in income. That little bit of money kicks them off of child care services to be able to have the subsidy needed so they can work and their children can be in a healthy, safe environment. This particular alliance will be looking at those things that could help us with strategies around the benefit cliff. And this kind of just goes into some of the things that they will be specifically looking at with those organizations: health care, housing, child care, access to fresh and very good old food that we love here in the South, financial counseling, family-centered coaching, wraparound support, and navigation. Because as that slide suggests, if you look at the menagerie of all of those things, it is difficult for someone to navigate systems, and so they will be supporting that. And pathways to prosperity, which is a evidence-based practice about helping people move beyond the benefits cliff. Now, one of my favorite programs, and Deputy Scott, we were very fortunate after I cried to customer-focused government that I too wanted a fellow. That we have one of the best fellows. We actually hired her, Destiny Brown, back there. Destiny, wave. Yep, that's Destiny. And I call her out because she has been very instrumental, along with our child care staff, in working to identify a workforce model with child care. Now, you're probably saying, what child care as a workforce strategy? What the pandemic taught us was without child care, the economy really had some struggles. And so we as a department said we need to work not just with families, but employers to sustain child care for their employees. So we came up with a child care workforce strategy. So just a quick overview on this. Next slide, please. We are continually to address the needs of employers, families, licensed child care. Now, basically what this slide is just telling you is that we had a systematic and a very foundational way in which we looked at this, not just from the lens of what we believe we do well, which is licensing child care centers. That's very important, but for a family who wants to work, what are those things that they need in a child care center that will also complement them from a workforce standpoint? So we did a lot of focus groups. We actually talked to a third-party provider, engaged them to do national research. You name it, we did it. Next slide. And so we came up with some benefits to employer-sponsored child care. And what the research demonstrates is that employers who invest in a child care benefit for their employees, they gain the upper hand in talent recruitment and retention efforts while also boosting productivity and profits. Child care partnerships between the public and private sectors can take many forms to best meet the needs of employers, employees, and the community. And we are now very pleased to offer this as a complementary service to an employer. And we do that through many different ways. We have a pre-licensure unit. The pre-licensure unit is available to employers. And what they really do is they go out and market what we can do for a business around child care services. We are actually even looking at tax breaks to have employers engage in setting up child care either on-site or in the vicinity of their business to help defray any costs that may come with employees utilizing child care centers. We also help the child care center with wages. We also we have a program that's been here for probably about 6 years now. It's called Smart Steps. What I love about Smart Steps is what we did is we looked at eligibility for employees and of businesses, and a lot of times they just don't make. They either make too much to qualify for services around child care subsidy. So we really just bumped it up a little bit. So you can qualify for Smart Step, being a little bit higher in income, or if you're actively engaged in going to school to improve your educational standpoint. Next slide. This is the coup d'etat. This is Tyson's in West Tennessee in Gibson County. Tyson's came to us by way of the Department of Economic and Community Department. I just messed that up. ECD. I'm sorry about the acronym. They came to us through that because we have a wonderful partnership working with ECD, Economic Services here in Tennessee, and they said Tyson is having some problems. They want to be in West Tennessee, but they cannot find people they have people that want to work, but there is a child care desert in this area. How can we support them? Working with Tyson, they said, can you come speak to our board about how important child care is? Which we did. And working with ECD, ECD was able to grant them some additional funds from the state of Tennessee. We worked with them in funding all of what's goes into a child care center, and Tyson Tykes, I think is the name. I wanted to go with Tyson Nuggets, but that didn't seem to, that didn't necessarily ring a bell. But this is a prime example of how private and public partnerships can make a difference for a community, a county, a state. Opening in 2023, and you can see it here, will be a child care center that is directly across from Tyson's factory. What is wonderful about this is that the partnership will have 104 slots of capacity. In other words, there will be 104 slots for children to be able to come here. If you work for Tyson, you get bumped up to the front of the list. And it has allowed Tyson to look at alternative schedules because this will be geared toward what Tyson needs. So in other words, if you need a second shift or a third shift, your child care center will be available for that. This is simply just one example. There are several that the Department of Human Services is engaged with, some large companies and even smaller companies, thanks to our strategy. I'm very excited about this. The only thing that I'm not excited about is that they want me to go and they want me to fly on that little crop duster plane, the state plane. I'm not doing that. I will be driving to Gibson County for the grand opening. This is just, and I want to say thanks to the State Workforce Board because we have set up in our state an atmosphere of partnership. And you guys did that with writing the Workforce Innovation. Our state plan really has helped us have these kind of opportunities within the state. We are currently working with the Department of Correction because they have a need for correction officers, not putting a child care center in a prison, but for those child care, for those correction officers who need that extra stuff. We are looking at Morgan County and working very closely with the leadership over there to do what we did with Tyson to try to answer some of these questions around or the problems that you have with retention and recruitment. So I'm going to be quiet. I think that was the last slide. Yeah, we can move on from that. Thank you, Isla. Just the next one. If you have any questions on anything that I have presented on around TANF opportunity or policy, other than reaching out directly to Destiny, who I'm just putting the bullseye on, Suzanne Carr is our senior policy advisor. That's her information. You can also find information on upcoming grants that will be made available to the public, or anything that I've presented on. But if you have any questions, I am ready to answer. Thank you. Yes.
All right, go ahead, Joe.
On the Tyson project, could you give some perspective on what investment was required to get that off the ground and established, and then also maybe how that broke down from, I guess, Tyson's investment and what resources were available?
Absolutely. And go back, we want to go back to the Tyson slide, but it says, so the question is just kind of a breakdown, what was Tyson's skin in the game, and how did the state respond to that? So what Tyson is land, right? The groundbreaking is across from them. But here's the other thing. Tyson kind of stuck their neck out to go to their board of directors to say, this is something we want to try. We want to do this. We want to be open. We want to be substantial in the community. Not only did they bring Tyson there, but they've also additionally did something to enhance the community by having health and safety, a child care center. Our role in that is that what the Department of Human Services did through our funding is we were able to fund everything that needs to go into the center. Books, like anything as it pertains to licensing the center. ECD, what they did is because our dollars could only reach so far, they put up dollars that would support the actual building of the center, the infrastructure. So it was very much a blended approach. And also Gibson County also had a stake in this, in that they also helped with the actual land of that. It was a perfect situation, not the perfect storm, but the perfect situation. And again, I think that Tennessee does this better than a lot of states, in that we don't just say, we can't do that because my money only goes this far. We sit down and look at it from a solutions base, and we want to really try to do this from the standpoint of what is the business needs. So they came to us and they told us, and then we worked around that. I hope I answered the question.
I'm curious about numbers, though, too,
Yes.
just to get some, because I think, as I see in Sevier County, a lot of small businesses that would love to be able to participate in child care and offer that. So I was just curious about the numbers to construct it, to get to.
Sure.
But then also the funding, once it's operational, is that all coming from Tyson, the operational?
Once it, so what Tyson did, and because we cannot just say, you need to use this, but they chose to go with an established center that already had a great reputation. They went with KinderCare. And so KinderCare really is their child care center. But in terms of the money, and I don't want to put ECD on like they have tons of money, because they don't. But in this particular thing, I think ECD put up about $2 million to help with that. But again, that's because Tyson's a large area, a large industry. It can be smaller. And as a matter of fact, we do have smaller businesses that we are working on just for this. We look at partnering with the Department of Education in terms of after-school care. That way you don't have to worry about a building like they did, but there may be some things already in the community that we can leverage by working with the city leaders there as well. So, and we have done that. Our role in that also was substantial in terms of funding, but I think because it was such blended, all three entities were able to work economically.
What other questions do you have for Sherelle?
Silence is good.
Well, that means you explained it incredibly well, so thank you for that. And
Thank you again, everyone.
All right. And have fun at the graduation party and with the in-laws. All right. All right, Courtney Matthews is the Director of Independent Living, and we're going to hear an update regarding extension of foster care and independent living. So come on up.
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you guys for having me. My name is Courtney Matthews. I am the Director of Independent Living with the Department of Children's Services. We have a lot of great things going on right now that I am excited to talk to you guys about and answer any questions that you guys may have. Just keep going. All right, so our division of DCS is a unique division of supporting the older youth in foster care. I'm assuming that everyone knows about Department of Children's Services, about foster care, and the work that DCS does on multiple levels. But our division works specifically with those teenagers and the youth that is aging out of foster care. So unfortunately, the reality is that when young people are in foster care, this population, as they get older, closer to age 18, the likelihood that they're going to, achieve permanency, to be able to exit foster care before 18, that opportunity is slim. So the likelihood that they're actually going to age out of foster care into adulthood is pretty high. So that's where our division comes in. And just to give you guys a brief overview of our division, we have independent living specialists across the state that work for DCS in each region. They work and support the youth, the foster parents, and the actual frontline case managers that work with this population and helps them to develop independent living plans when they're between the ages of 14 and 16, and a specific transition plan if they're still in foster care at the age of 17. And if they age out of foster care, which is really what I'm going to talk to you guys about, if they accept the extension of foster care services, that transition plan follows them into that service of being a part of our services up to the age of 21. So our division, it's a large task of serving this population with their challenges and their needs. And I don't know about you guys, but I think most people and also the public, when you think about foster care, you think about the babies, the younger kids, and not so much as those that are teens and turning 18. And to be honest with you guys, I really think, unfortunately, it took a pandemic to shine a spotlight on this population. So I really think that that's what got us here to where we are today. So if you think about turning 18, young people are excited about turning 18. It really isn't a magic number. If you guys think about when you turned 18, if you were ready truly to live independently, I know I wasn't. But this population, they're not ready either. And given the fact of being in foster care, think about it from the lens of the trauma that led an individual to be in foster care, traumas associated with actually being in foster care, but then the trauma and the anxiety around, I'm approaching 18. What is the next step? What is life after 18? What is this going to look like for me? So it's a challenging time for our young people. And one of the things that we ask and poll our young people, what do you guys need when you turn 18? And one of the things from, Tennessee young people and from a national standpoint, the biggest factor of supporting a young person that ages out of foster care is connecting to caring adults. So kind of let that marinate for a little bit, right? Typically, when you turn 18, you have family that's at your graduation, right? If you go into college, there's a move-in day. Everybody's excited, and nowadays they have matching shirts, and they're doing doing, all the things, right, to celebrate you as you graduate or you get your first job or you go to college, whatever that next step is, you have cheerleaders that's helping you. This population really doesn't, right? They have my team, and I think I see Miss Cheney back there. Wave your hand, Miss Cheney from Monroe Harding. Totally have them because we partner with Monroe Harding and their Youth Connections program. Largely, they are amazing. But we have, provider agencies that help and support this population. And a lot of times, we're the ones at their graduations and cheering them on with signs and all, doing the big to-do that we try to do. But when you think about it, it's really sad, right? It really is. And so that's why our division is so important. And it's important for the community and others outside of those that work directly with this population to be aware of their needs and their struggles, and that their voice is at each table is really important. So just really quick, what's covered in an independent living plan and a transition plan. These particular plans are developed with the young person to discuss like specific skills. How do I wash clothes? How do I shop? How do I create a budget? So these plans that we're developing with these young people, it is specific to that. So a breakdown of what the plans look like per age. Essential documents is a big one, right? Being in foster care and not having your birth certificate or your social security card, your state ID, those are things, my division, we know if you don't have those things when you turn 18, it's going to be really challenging for you to get in school. It's going to be hard for you to get a job. So we really work with frontline staff and foster parents to be conscious of that and plan for young people to receive those particular documents. So there's requirements that we address these particular indicators on either the independent living plan, depending on their age, or their transition plan. Housing is a big one, right? When I turn 18, where am I going? Where will I live? Right? That's huge. If your housing isn't stable, nothing else is stable. I heard our commissioner say that in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and it's so true. And again, thanks to our friends at Monroe Harding back there, they help us with housing supports for this population. Okay, so some core services that we offer to young people, older youth in care. We have a pocket of funding, it's federal funding called CHAFE, Independent Living Funds, that we can fund normalcy activities. So things such as driver's education classes. We have funding that we can pay for, things like that for this population. I can't tell you guys, I think the pandemic is dwindling down because I approved so many prom dresses and suits and graduation packages for our youth in foster care. I was really excited about that, but whew, I got a few extra gray hairs after approving so many. So we do have funding for that. And it's important because just because they're in foster care, they should have the same opportunities and experiences as any one of our kids, right? In any other peer that age, down to like extracurricular activities in sports. I've approved some Letterman jackets and all that stuff too, so I get excited. Highlight of my day. We have scholarship opportunities for our youth in care to go to college, an independent living allowance for youth and extension of foster care. It's a wide range of services that this population can receive. Is it perfect? No, it isn't perfect. There's always room to grow and expand for the benefit of this population. So what brings me to talk to you guys today? So have any of you guys heard of extension of foster care? No? Wow, okay. So, extension of foster care has been around for well over a decade. In 2010, Tennessee legislation was passed called the Tennessee Youth Empowerment Transition Act in 2010, which was aligned with federal law that allowed states to draw down federal funding to support youth that age out of foster care up until the age of 21. So prior to the Tennessee Transitions Act, we did this on a smaller scale of just using state funds. The service back then was called post-custody, if that rings a bell. The name changed to extension of foster care. And so these services have been around for over a decade. Why do we want to do extension of foster care? Just like I talked about, youth age out at 18, and they don't have, good, like, informal supports to support them. So this is an opportunity for the state and our providers to continue to offer foster care type services for youth that are eligible up to the age of 21. It improves graduation rates, decreases negative outcomes, connects youth to supportive adults, which we know that that is key. And again, like I said, drawing down federal funding. So we have had some recent changes to extension of foster care, which is really important for this group. So when Tennessee opted into extension of foster care, the federal provisions of extension of foster care, we opted into 3 of the eligibility criteria. I'll break this down for you. So under federal guidelines, there's 5 eligibility criteria for a young person to be eligible for extension of foster care services, but it's optional for states. So when Tennessee opted in, we opted into 3, and the 3 that we opted into was the young person has to age out, but the 3 that we opted into was completing a high school education or the equivalent. So they had to age out, but then also be in high school or getting their high set, formerly GED, or participating in a post-secondary program, so going to college or a vocational program. And then the 3rd criteria that we opted into is what we call the special needs criteria. It's if the young person ages out and they have a medical condition or a disability that prohibits them from going to school, we could offer extension of foster care services to them. And that population, by and large, typically we're working with the ECF Choices programs, the DID programs. We utilize extension of foster care to bridge the gap until they transition over into those longer-term adult services. However, effective January 1 of this year, and there's been multiple attempts at this, but Governor Lee signed a bill that allowed us to receive additional state dollars to opt in fully to extension of foster care. So now, effective January 1, if a young person ages out of foster care, they've completed their high school requirements, they can remain eligible for extension of foster care services if they are employed, if they're working at least 80 hours per month, or if they're participating in a program that leads to employment, right? So we've connected with the American Job Centers for that. So definitely some great partnerships going on to aid this population. So this is monumental for our state because one of the things that we were seeing, over a time is that young people would opt into extension of foster care, but they would lose eligibility for academic reasons. College isn't for everybody, right? So if they weren't going to college, then we couldn't serve them anymore. Now we can, and our numbers, our extension of foster care numbers are definitely increasing since January. So we're really excited about that. And one of the things, and I'll just plug this in here, one of the young people, as we were writing proposals for the expansion, one of the young people that's on our Young Adult Advisory Council, she stated, you know, sometimes as we're aging out of foster care, we feel forced to just pick a school to go to just so that we have a place to live. And I mean, that just brought it home. Like, we really need to do this. And you think about it, when you're turning 18, especially if they've graduated high school, they may just need a little bit of time to work and stack their money and then potentially go back to college. They may need a break, and we're actually seeing that right now. So we're really excited to have this opportunity to serve more of our young people that are aging out of foster care. So this is a snapshot of numbers, if any of my number people are here. So keep in mind, the expansion happened January 1. So we have a whole state fiscal year. We started this at the halfway mark of the state fiscal year. The difference between the chart at the top versus the one at the bottom, it's a point in time of this current fiscal year versus last year at the same time. So at the end of, what month is this? May, April, from the beginning of the fiscal year, July 1, 2022 to April 30th, 2023, we have a total of 364 active young people in extension of foster care. Compared to last year at the same time, we were at 292. That's a direct reflection of the EFC expansion. This chart here is where the meat sits in. So direct transitions into extension of foster care under the 2 additional criteria. This is to the end of March, but just looking at those 3 months of having the full implementation, right? So direct transitions, so what direct transitions is a young person aging out, going straight into EFC, right? The number was 7 under the 2 additional criteria. Seems low, but it makes sense. Typically, when a young person turns 18, they're probably still in high school, right? So we enrolled them under that secondary education criteria. Now, reestablishments, that 19 number, that's huge. That's the number of young people that since January, prior to January, they either never accepted extension of foster care when they turned 18, or they lost eligibility before January, and we had to end their services because we didn't have the new criteria. So just in that 3-month time period, we were able to reestablish 19. We're in May, that number is higher now. Now this 49 number, that's really telling us something. Prior to January 1, we would have had to discharge those 49 individuals had we not had the expansion. So what that number is the young person was in extension of foster care before January. After January, they just rolled over into either just the employment criteria or that removing barriers criteria. So we were able to keep 49 young people. Again, we're in May, that number is higher now. So we're really excited about the expansion. So where do you guys come in and why am I here? So one of the things that is really important when we talk about needs of young people aging out of foster care, we talk about this thing called grace, right? Young people aging out of foster care, been in foster care, period. They're in foster care, and likelihood of them having some type of traumatic experience is high. So young people going into the workforce, they may not, if they've been in foster care, especially if they age out of foster care, they may not have the skills to be able to, manage some work conflict, right? So having employers that are conscious of that would truly be beneficial to this population. But I'm also curious as to how we may be able to partner, considering we have these two additional eligibility criteria related to employment, to where our young people aging out of foster care or the older youth in care that's of working age could gain employment, right? So having those employment skills is truly important for this population. Like I said, we have already been partnering with Department of Labor and Workforce for the benefit of young people gaining jobs, raising awareness about the American Job Centers and participating in those particular programs, because if they're enrolled in those programs, we can enroll them under that removing barriers criteria for extension of foster care. It just allows us to be able to work with these young people for a longer period of time where they don't have those informal supports like most individuals have. I do have a video. Hopefully it will play. I don't know if you guys would want to see it. It's an extension of foster care video, and this is some of our actual Tennessee youth that's been in the
My name
program.
is Tristan Slough.
My name is Deasia Lewis.
My name is Keith McDonald.
My name is Destiny Hewling.
After I entered extension of foster care, I realized that my idea of it wasn't necessarily accurate.
My initial reaction was no. I'm actually super glad and blessed I did take the opportunity to sign myself into extension of foster care.
Because sometimes when people get out of high school, they're lost. They don't know what to do now. So I feel like if you do want to go to school and you want that consistent support, you want someone that's constantly going to remind you to keep going or whatever, I feel like the EFC would be a good idea.
I felt like I wasn't necessarily ready when I turned 18 to move out and be on my own. There wasn't enough done during my time in foster care to prepare for that. So once I turned 18, then I was fortunate enough to enter into an independent living program through extension of foster care. But if I hadn't had that, the situation I was in, I would not have been as successful as I have been today.
Just get a person to meet you every month to ask you how everything's going and going over like bills and something like that, just money management. I think that's the biggest part.
It's basically like a support system all the way from the start of college to finish.
We're figuring it out, but they're there to help us along the way.
Having that extra support system was really nice, and it's not like being in custody.
It's benefits and it helps you out later on in life.
I find a lot of times it's easy to think, oh, people are just telling you what to do, or you're just, stuck listening to somebody else. But if you're able to truly take advantage of the program and do what you're supposed to, you can basically be your own person and be your own adult.
If you are thinking about it, just don't think, just do it. It's a great idea.
I think there's nothing to lose. I mean, you meet with a caseworker once a month, you get all these extra benefits, and there's even more out there if you really need it.
Nothing bad comes from it. It's always help. It's just help. There's no reason not to do it.
Get all the benefits you can and don't look at this a bad way at all, because they're actually helping you. And stay the course, because later on in the future, it's gonna get tougher and harder. So once you stay the course and do this, they have your back.
You are better off with this program than without. That's not to say anything negative about you. That's not to say you can't accomplish this, but this is only gonna help you.
You've lived in foster care for however long, take advantage of these benefits and let them help you. You deserve it.
So just a little disclaimer, this video is a little old. We do have to update it to include the employment component. But anytime I get the opportunity to show that video, I think it just drills it, brings it home, just the reality. And you can actually see some of our Tennessee young people that's gone through the program. And most of those individuals, they're over 21 now and have gone through the program. One of the young men recently, Cheney, I believe, he graduated from Vanderbilt, that was in the video. So, so we're just excited to be able to serve this population and partner with anyone that is willing to help. Any questions for me?
I have a question. Oh, go ahead, Marshall.
Well, just for context, like for these adults, how many of these folks like leave the home they're living in on the day they turn 18? Is that typical?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll give you a reality. By the time a young person has been in foster care for years and they see that magic number 18 and they turn 18, they're sick of us, being honest. They choose to leave.
Okay.
Extension of foster care is a voluntary program.
Yeah.
It is voluntary. I'm so thankful that we have the reestablishment process, because if they choose not to accept the services when they turn 18, it's okay. We give them our contact information. There's a reestablishment process, and we do have many come back and reestablish. They're eligible anytime up to the age of 21.
But most of them leave the home they're in. The majority of them would leave the program and therefore leave the home that they're in.
Well, and are you talking about the foster
Physical,
home?
yeah, physical, leave the home.
Yeah, so I mean, if they are in an actual foster home when they turn 18,
Yeah.
the likelihood of them, and that home is stable,
Yeah.
the likelihood of the young person accepting extension of foster care and staying in that home is high, actually. It's the population that are in foster care that may be in residential, like a group home setting, or they're in a foster home that was just placed there and they don't have a good relationship with the foster parent. That's what we see. But then we also, all exits aren't negative.
Yeah.
Some young people have family out of state. When they turn 18, they want to move out of state and live with their family, and they can do that as well. So last fiscal year, our uptake percentage was 44% of young people that aged out and were eligible for extension of foster care that actually accepted it. I anticipate with this expansion at this point, that number, that percentage is probably going to be significantly high. The other thing to consider, even though they age out, to be eligible, they have to be doing one of the 5 criteria, whether it be in school, college, or working.
In the past, we've talked about labor force participation, and this group doesn't get counted. The foster children don't get counted in that group. Do they get counted in this group if they enrolled in this program? Are they part of our labor force at that point? And I wonder what the numbers are. You don't have to answer all that, but it's interesting to me.
Of the young, I mean, we have many young people that are in the program that are working, if that's
Yeah,
what
I'd
you're
like to know
asking.
what that percentage is. We
Yeah.
know we don't count them in the labor force numbers when they're in foster care, but once they get into your program, it'd be interesting to know what that participation rate is.
And I'm wondering, are they not counted because they're a minor?
Because the word I use, they considered institutional.
I gotcha.
They're 16 and older or something.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So they would not be counted if they are in the foster care system prior to being, if they are in the foster care system, they are considered institutionalized. Once they transition into your program, they would be included in the labor force participation rate.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation.
I guess I was curious as to how you would know the young person is in foster care if they're working. You know what I mean? Like if they're 16 and they get a job, how do you know they're in foster care?
The employer wouldn't.
How?
They would, like, they would not.
Oh, yeah, okay, gotcha.
Jason, you had a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. First of all, thank you for the presentation, very informative and very exciting to see the increase of people participating in this program. I do think it's very important. But you mentioned that currently, I guess at the end of April, 364 individuals were a part of the extension of foster care. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think just a minute ago you mentioned that only about 50% of the eligible individuals sign up for it. So is that meaning, I guess what I understand, how many people in our state would be eligible for this? I'm not talking about their, maybe they haven't met the eligibility requirements, but just the general number. How many every year of children in foster care are turning 18, I guess is what I'm wondering to understand.
I got you. So I don't have the numbers for current fiscal year because we're still in it, but last fiscal year, there were a total of 801 young people that aged out of foster care.
And of that, 292 signed up.
So there was a total of 801 that aged out. There is a population of young people that age out that are not eligible for the service. So the total population that aged out that were eligible for EFC, and eligibility is by their placement when they turn 18. For example, currently, when a young person turns 18 in foster care, if they're in a hardware secure facility, like the youth development center, I think it's Wilder, or if they're in a detention, so if they're in a placement where it's lock and key, hardware secure, they're not eligible.
Okay.
We are having some meetings about that internally. So the population that aged out eligible out of that 801 was 680. So the uptake from that 680 was 44%, total number 294.
Okay.
That actually accepted it.
Right.
Right? So we look at the numbers of young people that age out and accept it. We also have recurring young people that remain in the program, year after year up to their 21st birthday, as long as they remain eligible. So just to give you guys just another number, that was our uptake. For last fiscal year, the total number of young people that were in extension of foster care was 830. Does everybody understand that difference? So like that 830 includes some 19-year-olds, some 20-year-olds. So the total number that was in the program last fiscal year was 830.
I do have maybe a question. So because of the age group, and I'm thinking about the age group, is there a partnership with Tennessee Apprenticeship Program?
Not at the moment.
Yeah, Michelle, you're reading my mind, because this sounds like the perfect opportunity for agencies to work together and say, wait a minute, why aren't we, partnering and letting them take, because again, not everybody needs to go to college, but we've already established that there are plenty of opportunities now through apprenticeships and TCATs and different things like that can allow folks to transition into those opportunities. So
absolutely.
What do we need to do as a board to make sure those agencies are working together and say, hey, here's some people that can be in your program. They're coming out of our system, and let's
contact information. I think that's just, me knowing who to contact and having a meeting and discuss it. Because like I said, prior to January, if a young person was in an apprenticeship, unfortunately, they weren't eligible, but now they are.
Yeah.
She's leaving, but she's going to leave.
I'm going to catch you. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, your new contact is Jessica. Yeah. All right, very good. Thank you, Michelle. And Courtney, thank you. Excellent presentation. Clearly something that you're passionate about, and we appreciate that. And I love that enthusiasm, and you can see that that's contagious in this room. So
thank you. I don't know if you guys saw the news, Fox 17 2 weeks ago. We have a young adult advisory council, and this is young people either in the program or have been through the program that want to do advocacy work and make it better for the generation coming behind them. I took a group to the state capitol 2 Fridays ago. They got to meet the governor and actually have a seat at the table and talk about needed changes. My phone has been ringing off the hook since.
Good.
But it's all good things.
Good. I love that.
Thank you.
Thank you
guys
very
for
much.
having me.
Okay. All right, let's take a break. It's 11:20, so let's say 11:30, come back, and we'll get a committee update. Okay, one thing I forgot to do in the first half was talk about the minutes from the last meeting and get those approved. So I'm making the assumption that you had a chance to access those, review them, and I would welcome a motion to accept those minutes as presented. All right, Kevin makes that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Michelle. And any discussion on the minutes from the last meeting? Okay, all in favor of approving those as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, those minutes are approved. All right, let's get some updates from the committee meetings that we had earlier today, and we'll start with the Oversight Committee. Michelle, do you want to give us a recap of that meeting?
Sure can. Today is going to be a brief summary. We had a fiscal review, the expenditures and from Title I to IV. There has been, we're doing great. We did see an increase in the expenditures, but those are more related to market rates, adjustments in salaries and benefits. So all of those welcome. So we also had a review on the KPIs for 2023. We have a traffic light approach to it. Anything above 86% to target, rated 4 or 5. Those are in green. The yellow, so we're good there, and those have mostly green. We had a yellow. Those are 2 to 3. For those are either approaching target or by that time we will have technical support on those programs. And then red, that is 1. We had a couple of those. We had questions about those and how we can revamp them, and for those we have corrective actions in place. So all moving in the right directions. We continue to have, so I'm going to just provide you a little bit of context. We've been, my committee has been asking, and the Oversight Committee has been asking for development on how the reporting for the fiscal review, especially the way that how are we measuring targets, goals, looking for a good outcome, right? Are we trending the right direction? Are we moving the right direction? And we are in a lot of discussion, but we have a time constriction during the Oversight Committee. So with the support of Kevin Wright, the Assistant Commissioner of BR, he also had to ask from us that we need to kind of review the data points. It's a lot of information to discuss in only a short amount of time. So we have, my committee has been grateful, super they will accommodate an extra meeting in the meantime. So I am going to open the invitation to anybody else in the board meeting that is interested in coming. You can send your information to Eiler if you want to participate in that. But the plan is, as of today, to have titles come in, report, what do we have in place and how can we make it better? Come in with study already and recommendations, and then come in it's a workshop, so it's going to be everybody putting in their thinking hats. So we're looking to have that prior to the next board meeting. So that was a lot of the discussion. Assistant Commissioner Kevin came in and did an amazing overview of VR as of we see it today. You'll see a little bit of what we have been discussing in Assistant Commissioner Jay Baker later on. He's going to present later on, so we're going to see a little bit of that. But more on that discussion later. And last but not least, Justin provided us with over 30 policies that are going to go into auto renew because they're doing great. So those are going to go into effective July 1st of 2023, and those are being, the board has already reviewed them, and we're good to go, so we're in a good place. So those are great news as well. So that's my summary for now.
Yeah. Very good. Anybody have questions for Michelle or the Oversight Committee? Very good. Okay, so next let's hear from Operations and Stuart Price.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to, the Operations Committee convened virtually a couple of weeks ago, and each of our work groups leadership took time to present to us and receive feedback on their charter renewals, and so we had a healthy meeting. I just appreciate them being there and taking the time to engage with us. Today we received a SNAP Employment and Training Plan Overview for program year 2024. In that we received a review of objectives, which boils down to helping eligible participants achieve their vocational goals and increase self-sufficiency through funded education, skills training, and supportive services. In that presentation, they discussed eligibility requirements and participant identification criteria. They discussed funding and noted in that in particular the USDA SNAP E&T 50/50 grant. And in fiscal year 23, Tennessee was approved for just under $8.4 million in federal E&T 50/50 match funds. Focus areas for program year 2024 will be, in terms of key metrics, will be employment outcomes, attainment of industry recognized credentials, increase engagement in rural counties, engagement with reentry population, participation in the Blue Oval City area that addresses employer needs, increasing use of job search training and work readiness activities, and use of work-based learning opportunities. Presentation by Michelle Joyner and Lisa Johnson, very much appreciated and grateful for that. We then received a job seeker work group. We had 3 work group presentations and discussions. The first was the job seeker work group. And fundamentally, just their overarching goal, I'll just read this as a reminder, to ensure there's a comprehensive approach to workforce development through the creation of a collaborative plan by workforce partner agencies to further enhance the convenience and accessibility of the workforce system. And so we had they presented a job seeker dashboard that they have developed along with internal resources. And the committee appreciates the effort in this and was impressed with what they developed. We had some good discussion and some good feedback on some ideas and how we might make it more intuitive. And then a couple of suggestions going forward with respect to the dashboard, one of which was to seek out a beta group, test group of job seekers to engage with the dashboard and give feedback on how they perceive its user-friendliness, for lack of a better term. And so that, we feel, will be the most valuable input for this group in terms of developing a dashboard where a job seeker can engage into our system and receive, through that engagement, contact information that's local to them based on what services they're seeking, whether it's employment or training or assistance of some sort. And so we're excited about that. We also, though, as a committee, are definitely supportive of the objective here and see the need for it because it's a complicated system for a job seeker to engage and understand what they need. We also, though, are sensitive to the time and energy of the work group and the people that support them, and want to make sure that the efforts they're pursuing are not redundant with other tools that we already have. And so, in respect to them, that's an area of feedback. We asked that they take a look at the Virtual American Job Center website and explore that and its presentation, but also whether or not there's an opportunity to link the two and provide an even better experience for the job seeker. So they also this morning have promulgated to us the Workforce Resilience Plan, Section 1, which is fundamentally the current state, and it includes a customer journey map for the job seeker. And so we'll be going through that over the coming weeks to give feedback with respect to that portion of the resilience plan, Section 1. There's a Section 2 to follow and so forth. So that's the job seeker work group. Next, we heard from the business services work group. Jennifer Thacker was presenting for them. They addressed some concerns and questions we had from our previous meeting, specifically centered around the employer engagement dashboard. They discovered after they developed it that it had information that private information that we couldn't share publicly across other agencies. We could use it internally, but the full value of it was limited because of some of the information that's on it. We had discussion around that and decided that they would come back to us with a new version that would have scrubbed any of the personal information, but still offer us a good insight into the progress that we're making with the business services work group and business engagement. Specifically, we also talked about the virtual recruiter as it relates to Jobs for TN website, and there was a lot of good that comes from that. In particular, it assists the foundation. It assists employers and job seekers in finding new opportunities. Some of the real value of it, though, is it's more of a proactive tool that sends out reminders to employers and continues to prompt them, recognizing that our employers are busy and so forth. So that's one of the key benefits that it provides. But by and large, there was a very positive opinion of that. So they also discussed the Employer Advisory Subcommittee and the fact that they have low engagement there. They have 15 members that are assigned, and generally they have 1 to 3 that show up. And so they're going to be going back and looking at reconstituting that group to get greater engagement and more meaningful outcomes. And then finally, we heard from, and we also ran short on time, but we heard from the Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning work group. They had enough time to take a victory lap around the committee, which they is well earned. This group has exceeded every one of their goals, and in some cases doubled their goals. Currently, they have 7,273 apprentices. And by the way, this number, they had 7,222 last quarter. This number also includes completers, right? So as we saw some really rapid increases when this work group started their efforts, we can expect to see it become a little more stabilized as time goes forward, because we have people that are completing and the new people coming in. As far as work-based learning, we have 40,600 work-based learning students. Huge number, which is awesome. And there are now 51 Tennessee certified pre-apprenticeship programs in the state. So all of those are incredibly positive numbers, and just really give kudos to Matthew Spinella and Holly Free-Allard and the people that support them. They're just done an awesome job. The committee really appreciates their efforts. So that was our operations committee.
That's great. Thank you, Stuart. Any questions for Stuart or the operations committee? Good details. Thank you. Okay, let's hear from the innovation committee. Kevin, what happened in your meeting this morning?
Thank you, Ms. Berry. We had a lot of great talks. First of all, we welcome Mr. Joe Baker to our committee. He's going to bring a lot to it. We gave him kind of the background orientation of the three committees and how they work, and that he was part of the innovations. We talked about our charter a little bit, which I'll get back to. Ryan Allen, he gave us an update on the committee workforce performance, on wage retainment, job seekers workforce dashboard, the supply demand report, unemployment benefits, which was an add-on to what we had heard in here this morning. Amy spoke to us about a vocational rehabilitation program that had been launched for forklift training program in Bradley County. Also, some of their milestones was the executive dashboard was completed. That also was on the unemployment insurance, that it's in progress. The adult education system procurement still in progress. And we had some targets set for KPIs that will be out in June 23rd. Then Ms. Teresa gave us a APDS summary report on the tablets that are in the jails. It's jumped a lot from I think it was 110 that first started out when they rolled it out, to 8,120 tablets in over 126 facilities. With that being said, however, there is a couple of problems. One being there's 5 counties that are not on board with this. I think that's due to the sheriffs that's been elected. However, Mr. Vance said that he had a contact with one of the counties that he was going to try to change that over for us. The other big obstacle they have is having the internet access. And we'll come back to that again once we get to our charter here. We went over what our charter was, what it meant to us, our goals. So some of the things that we're going to start looking at, that's, like I said, Mr. Vance was going to take care of one of the counties of getting them internet, or getting them on board with us. We also wanted to keep that on our agenda because of the amount of money that's being spent on these tablets. Marshall said, hey, it's not a good idea to just let that fall to the wayside on that, because we couldn't get access to that. So we're going to keep that on our charter. We're also looking at, Mr. Joe Baker brought up that he'd like to see the housing that's in his county for the seasonal workers. There's not a lot for that, so we're going to put that on our scope also. One other thing that we talked about is, the last couple meetings, we've been meeting 30 minutes prior to that. Well, we've decided that that's not enough time for us, and we're going to, I've got with Ms. Eiler, and we're going to meet another time and for a half a day to get our milestones for all of our charter, which at our next meeting, I'll be able to give you an update of what our charter looks like.
Very good. I appreciate that extra commitment to get your objectives set. What questions do you have for Kevin or the Innovation Committee?
Sorry, I'm just curious about what's the pushback I'm curious on what's the pushback on utilizing the iPads.
Well, these 5 counties, that was mostly that they had got a new sheriff, and he wasn't on board with having them in there. No, but I did ask, and I do know that we've exhausted all of our resources to try to change their mind. That's when Jeff did speak up and say, hey, I know a judge, maybe I can change their mind, but as of right now, these counties will just be left out. Unless, Ms. Teresa, can you add anything else to that? No? Who are you pointing to?
I'm going to chime in on that one. TACC's Chief of Staff for the department. Those counties has somewhat fluctuated, and so we do have some plans and work with some of those associations that sheriffs would belong to, and some of those folks to really know that this is very important to us as a state as a whole. And so we do have some plans as well to touch with those individuals. But again, they represent you all locally, that conversation about the importance can be shared at those levels too. So we do thank you for that option, that if folks are willing to have that conversation too.
Can you tell us what 5 counties are reluctant?
Yes.
It's,
they are. Coffee, Cumberland, Fentress, Madison, and Overton.
Very good. Good question.
I'm just curious, is there a measuring stick for the success rate with this program?
There was somewhat that Teresa gave me. Do you want to speak on that, or?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Please, Jay. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you, Mike. So yes, the measuring stick we have around deployment of the tablets, first and foremost, like getting them in, and that's part of this issue of not getting into 5 of these counties. Then the connectivity metric, like how many of these are we actually just getting up and running and ready to use. And then we're starting to measure what we actually want to measure, which is usage and outcomes. And so we're starting to see some uptick in usage and outcomes, but we still got a long way to go on those other 2 first aspects of this. Ultimately, we're trying to see, are we getting education gains from people who use this, employment and training usage out of it, and ultimately, does that turn into high school equivalency, enrollment and training programs, and jobs?
And some of that's going from, is it going to be landline or is it going to be wireless, and where are they getting the money for the funding for that? But that is something that we're also putting on our charter. We're not letting that fall behind. We want to see more about it and where they're at with that. So this is just not, we don't want these 5 counties or internet access to just go away with the program. Too much has been spent for that.
Very good. Okay, let's move on to our next topic. We're going to hear from Steve Plale on the Summer Youth Employment Program.
Thank you, Chairman. Steve Plale, Assistant Commissioner here at the Department of Labor and Workforce Development. I oversee the Division of Workforce Services. It's my pleasure to talk to you today about the Summer Youth Employment Program. This is a brand-new program that we have stood up in a very quick time frame, and are really excited about the direction that we're moving forward with this. You may be aware, you may remember in Governor Lee's budget for this upcoming fiscal year, the legislator allocated, he proposed $15 million for summer youth work experience. And so that has translated into this new Summer Youth Employment Program. We're doing really well with that. Just be real upfront and kind of quick about this. We're doing really, really well. We outlined a metric of 3,750 young people, putting that many people to work over the course of the next year. That time frame that we have for that funding. Emphasis on actually this summer. We don't receive that $15 million until July 1st, but we're pushing to really try and get that out the door as quickly as we can this summer, so that those individuals can access that funding now. We realized that that's halfway through the summer, so we actually backed up and we said we're going to allocate additional resources, federal dollars that we had in reserve, and that we could reallocate from other funding sources. So we have now actually committed an additional $3 million from federal funds to be able to support this in a phase 1, and then our state funding, the $15 million in a phase 2 approach. Excited to share that right now we have received proposals. We have reviewed proposals. We have approved those proposals, and we have pushed out the door already the funding award and are going through the contracting process right now to expend almost 100% of that $15 million that was allocated, and almost $2 million of the three that we allocated in federal sources. So almost $17 million that we're going to spend to put young people to work. Our goal of 3750, we're going to far exceed that. We are actually, if everyone hits the numbers that have been proposed, we will be at 4,536 young people who will be put to work through an 8-week summer youth employment experience. So really excited about this and excited about the direction that we're moving. We're partnering with our local workforce boards to administer phase 1. Several of them are also participating in phase 2. But we also are partnering with nonprofits and community organizations in phase 2 as well, as that is state money. And so really appreciate many of our local boards, executive directors are still in the room today. Really appreciate their hard work and commitment to serve the youth in their areas and partner with school systems, employers to make sure that we have placements for youth in this experience. And then also, if I may, if I can transition for just a moment, Chairman, just to say thank you to this board. I know that was discussed earlier in Deputy Scott's comments, but appreciate the opportunity to serve in another capacity. And I would not be able to do that without the wonderful people, a whole bunch of them are in the back of the room, in my staff. And so I just want to say thank you to them for stepping up and doing all of the great work that they do on a day-to-day basis. So.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions for Steve? Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, thank you for your service, and hadn't met before today, I don't believe, but I'm excited that you're going into the Army National Guard. That's exciting. I'm unfamiliar with the program, but I'm just quick math. I understood you say that there's about $17 million that's going to be dispersed to see that 4,000 or so kids are employed for the summer. If you could offer a little bit of information about that. It's $4,000 per kid is about what my math shows. Where does the money go? Does it go directly to the child? And how does that affect the employer? Is the employer paying anything in addition to that?
Absolutely. Great questions. So we allocated the funding based off of a formula calculation. We estimated that during this time frame, individuals will be able to work 8 weeks, up to 25 hours per week, and up to $16 per hour. So that works out to, per participant, $3,200. We also built into the budget administration of this. So the vast majority of this funding is going directly to participants, but up to 10% of this funding, the local areas or the nonprofits could retain for administration of this funding. So that would be to cover any sort of benefits, wage, taxes, workers' compensation, any of those sorts of things that they may be, they may need to provide for that young person to be employed. We cost per participant right now, based off of the total number that we have, it's again 4,536. Cost per participant is 3,189. So we are, of that 3,200 number that we were basing our budget off of, 3,189 of that is going to go directly to participants.
Go ahead.
Steve, if you will, explain who they're the employees of and what the primary roles that the employer is going to have. I think it's one of the things that Joe's asking.
Yeah, so it varies from employer to employer, obviously, on the difference, that experience that individual might be working in. But it could be, we did not limit the work experience that they could participate in. So it could be a hospitality, tourism industry. It could be agriculture, family business, as long as it was a reputable business that was filing taxes and was part of our system, then that individual could work there. This funding, though, is to offset that wage for that individual to come and work. So our local boards and our nonprofits are going to be partnering with those organizations to essentially say, hey, what is the work plan, what is the job description, what does the role look like for this youth, and then we're going to pay the wages for that youth up to this amount.
So then, Steve, talk about how employers get in contact with these. with the youth who are
Absolutely.
part of the program.
So on our website, we actually have the Summer Youth Employment Program page. And then we also, here on this screen, we have this nice graphic and one-pager that was developed by our communications team. If you scan that QR code, it will actually take you to that page where you as a participant or you as an employer could get in contact with or get more information on this program. In our local areas, depending on where you are, you would reach out to that local board, the one-stop operator, or the staff to the board there, and they could also direct you to how to enroll, how to participate in this program.
And just to add to that as well, so the employer primarily is responsible for supervision and turning in a time card each week. No reimbursement. The local board or the nonprofit will pay, they'll be the employees of that entity.
Good. Sounds like a great program. We just need to make sure we're marketing it to the employers so they know that they have access to those students.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so we are looking at ways that we can continue this program. This is the kind of first year major influx of dollars from the state legislature to support this type of initiative. We're already exploring ways that we could potentially continue this work in future years and do more of that marketing and outreach earlier so that we can engage more employers and more students later on.
Good. Other questions for Steve? Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next we're going to get the fiscal update from Assistant Administrator Ivan Greenfield. So come on up, Ivan, my favorite fiscal man.
Oh, it is afternoon. So good afternoon, everyone. And so we're going to be doing things a little bit different. Today, I'll talk a bit about the overview as far as our core programs in workforce development. And then we will have adult education's Jay Baker, the real Jay Baker. And we'll have Mr. Kevin Wright, vocational rehab, come up and talk a little bit more, add a little more flavor about their programs specifically. So we'll go ahead and get started. Get this little guy. Thank you. So again, fiscal overview. We'll look at also our program year 23 funding, talk a little bit about the allocations themselves and the budget that's derived from those state WIOA dollars. And then we'll look at some key performance updates. Steve kind of already did a really good job about talking about the Summer Youth Employment Program, but there's some numbers on the last slide if we have any questions, any further questions about that. So we'll jump right in. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. There we go. All right, so basically for our three, there are 4 core programs. 2 are administered by Workforce Services. That's 1 and 3, Titles 1 and 3, and then Adult Education, Title 2, and Vocational Rehabilitation, Title 4. And you see their combined authorized funding of basically $190 million, expenditures about $123 million, net position through quarter 3, this state fiscal year, $67 million. Looking at Workforce Services a little more specifically, you'll see that $118 million in authorized funding versus $58 million with a net position of $59. It's important to note, and this distinction why they're giving more program-specific content for Workforce Services, or those 2 titles underneath. We owe title funds. You continue to see drop in funding there, looking at the $47 million versus 43, and the 27 versus the 23 there. But we also see an offset in state dollars to help with the other discretionary programs, specifically apprenticeship, and we did a lot of talking about reentry this morning. And so That's been really helpful, and seeing the more state dollars as we see a continuing decline in our federal dollars, again, for the Title I program. Moving on to the next slide. So these are enrollments specific to Title I. You see just basically 14,000 for Title I. Not included in here is about 27,000 on Title III, Wagner-Pfizer. Kind of pretty flat quarter to quarter on the enrollments. And I'm moving to the allocations. You'll kind of see here the Title I, Title III programs. Important to note, 53.8 million combined allocations for our start July 1st through June 30th, program year 23. You'll see that's about a 4% decrease compared to last year, and more 10% decrease really in that Title I. So you see 13% over 2 years. And again, that's just based on economic data, mostly unemployment and low income. And so as we do good in those factors, low unemployment, then the funding declines. Derived from that, the allocations are our state reserve, and basically from the titles, there's a 15% reserve from the three programs underneath Title I, and a 10% reserve under Title III. And you can see we're looking at about a 5% decrease at 8.1 million this year, and then 18% on a 2-year comparison with the state reserve funds. This is what we use to fund various state-required and allowable activities. And so here's the proposed budget based on the PY23 and carry-in. We have about 20 million of funds that we're proposing underneath this budget to support these activities here. Agency priorities include consolidated business grants that we do that are more employer-facing through our local boards, additional funding to our local boards who have taken a hit, and given the declination of fundings. Economic development, our blue ovals and other EV-related or downstream activity of 7.5 million. Program evaluations, Deputy already kind of talked about the comprehensive evaluation that we're going to be doing to look at our programs and how we can deliver services more efficiently. And then monitoring, so constant, and then systems administrations, our case management system, grants management system, and our virtual AJC, 3.8 million. So that's the proposed budget for PY23. I will turn that over for a vote from the board, or any questions?
All right, do we need a vote on that? There's no...
Yes, we generally.
We do? Okay, got it. Thank you, sorry. Okay, any questions for Ivan? And Ivan, if you'll make a suggestion for a motion that we need?
Anybody motion the approval of the?
Motion to approve the proposed budget as presented.
Motion.
Right? Does that sound right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Jason. And second? Second, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry.
All right. And any discussion on that budget?
Does this approval make this not a proposed budget, or is there what's the next step for you in terms of moving the budget forward in the organization?
We just start conducting the activities underneath the underlying activities, excuse me.
Okay. All right. So all in favor of accepting the proposed budget as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. You can keep spending some money.
Thank you, Chairman. And then our state key performance, again, these are internal program-specific budgets, KPIs, key index, key performance indexes. And the way that we looked at, there are 19 in total. They're assigned an achievement ranking of 0 to 5, 0 being needs improvement, unacceptable needs improvement, 5 being like a best practice, right? And so you'll see on the next slide, they're organized green, yellow, and red. Again, red being 0 to 1, green being 4 to 5, or best practice. And what we see is 15 of the 19 are at that 4 to 5 ranking, right? They either met or achieved their their performance, or they're even at a best standard kind of. And then there are 3 in the yellow. Anything below 3 or below is where we kind of, Ms. Falcon talked about it earlier, we use that as an indicator to provide technical assistance to see what the issues are and how we can help to get the numbers up to meeting whatever those target goals are, which are usually some sort of enrollment or co-enrollment. And you see that these numbers are quarterly. You can see some seasonality and some of the spiking of the numbers. So this number here, new teachers apprenticeship, they had a goal of 40, but they actually overall hit 199. So it's like 5-fold. But the first quarter was 15, second quarter 15, third quarter 5, fourth quarter 5. And so it was a new target. So they didn't really have anything to base any historical performance to base it off of, but they blew that out of the water. And then same thing with reentry. And so what we're going to go through negotiations again actually the next coming month for PY23 targets. And so you'll see some changes to these numbers. Some may go away, some more may be added. But again, these are program specific. The National Dislocated Worker is the same thing. This was out there for 2 years. It's kind of winding down. They've exceeded their target as well. So that's really not, because they didn't have anything indicated in the third quarter, that's why you see that red number there. But it's not a lack of performance, is what I'm trying to convey. No questions? We also have our federal measures. 18 of those, 16 of the 18 are in green with the federal measures. What happens there is, as long as we are meeting 90% of the target, that's the gray numbers there. You see everything is green, but we do have 2 reds. But everything is green because we are meeting at least 90%, but we were below the negotiated target there. And our measurable skills gains for youth and our credential attainment for dislocated worker. But again, we are meeting the required 90%. We're above that, so we're not failing. We're passing everything. It was just below the negotiated target. All right. And then Steve kind of talked about summer youth funding, 18 million, 3 million federal, 15 million in state. We're at 16 million on the committed as far as the proposals that have been submitted. Target proposed versus target participants, and then the term of phase 1 and phase 2. So that's kind of the end of the workforce services overall fiscal component. Are there any questions? I'll take that as a no.
Okay, sounds good. And so next, Jay Baker will give us an update on your numbers, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Tell us what you got.
I will be brief. I'll try to abbreviate this for the sake of time. We're excited to be able to share a little deeper dive. Ivan does such a great job giving high-level numbers for the system. But again, per Chairman Falcone's comment earlier, we want to be able to give you a little deeper dive into adult education in particular and vocational rehabilitation, deeper dive into their data as well, both fiscal and performance. So This is who adult education serves. Not going to go through this whole thing. Our target audiences are folks without a diploma, immigrants who need ESL, the county jails, which we talked a little bit about today, as well as folks just struggling in college or work. We set out this program year, starting in July, with specific key performance indicator plans and targets. They are participant enrollment, measurable skill gains, which is someone who shows noticeable improvement on their math, reading, writing, or earning a diploma, soft skills and digital literacy certificate attainments, workforce development initiatives participants. This is pre-apprenticeships, integrated education and training program participants, workplace learning participants. And then we have labor force participation rate related KPIs, which is when we have students who come into adult education, we want to identify them if they're not in the labor force and have a very specific conversation with them with a career coach, as well as doing some targeted outreach campaigning in our 5 lowest counties of LFPR. So really quickly, where we are as of the end of April on these, we are at 10,600 plus for our participant enrollment. This is great. That means we'll exceed our target of 11,000 adult ed participants. Measurable skill gains, our target is 39% over the course of the year. That doesn't sound very high. We're trying to get higher targets, but our actual is at 32.5%. This means that of all those 11,000 students that we touch, at least 32.5% of them have shown some kind of measurable skill gain or received a diploma. Soft skills and digital literacy, we have programs that focus specifically on this for students to improve their digital literacy, their soft skills, to help them be more ready for work. We have given out over 2,200 of these so far this year, so we've exceeded our target there. Workforce development initiatives, we've had over 1,100 participants in this. We're very excited about our work in this space. We're not just a diploma program. We're not just a GED. We're much more. We're really helping folks get work and training opportunities right out the gate. And then for those labor force participation rate KPIs, we are still working out the details on how to make sure we're tracking these career coach conversations that happens with students. So that's still in the TBD phase that we'll try to get some actual numbers for you next time. And then for this last component of the outreach advertising in the counties with the lowest LFPR, you can see the counties here. We've identified the 5, and we have made the plan, and we're ready to go do this, launch the marketing campaign. So that will be starting next week through the summer, and we're excited to, basically the gist of the messaging is, don't let lack of education stop you from getting a job. Come to adult ed. And so we're really hopeful that that will make a big dent there. Our financials, deeper dive here. For this program year, we are just shy of $18 million in total funding. You can see the breakdown of federal and state. Our total expenses through the end of Q3, so through the end of March, is about at $12 million. And this is mostly goes out into our local grants. So our office administers grants out to the state through, we have K-12 school systems, TCATs, community colleges, nonprofits who actually provide services to Tennesseans across the state. And we have adult basic education grants, integrated English literacy and civics education grants, and state general grants, which help fund HiSET testing, graduation ceremonies, things like that. You can see the breakdown here. So we still have some spending that we need to get done here in the next few months. And here at the department, our operational budget is about $2 million, and we're on track to fully expend our budget here. Lastly, I wanted to update you really quickly. 2 months ago, I announced we're doing this grant competition, and we are finalizing that, and it's been made public now, so I can tell this group as well. We're very excited that we've adjusted our service area map a little bit here. We're adding 5 brand new providers. So currently, today, we have 13 agencies that cover the entire state. That's not very much. So our goal going into this was get more agencies, and we have added 5 new plus 3 subcontracted agencies. So we'll have 21 agencies getting funding from this department to provide services as opposed to just 13. We're also infusing about $4 million more in the coming fiscal year into adult education. So we're very excited about what's to come in adult ed. And then quickly, here is our integrated English literacy and civics education grant allocation as well. That was really fast fly through. Thank you for indulging me. We look forward to be able to giving you this kind of detailed information about the adult education program in future board meetings. Please let me know if you'd like to see this formatted any differently. I plan to make it a little prettier next time as well, but we're excited to share it with you, so thank you.
I like those numbers. What questions do you have for Jay? All right. Appreciate you exceeding those goals. All right, next we're going to hear from Division of Rehabilitation Services. Brittany and Julie, come on up.
Thank you for having us. I'm Julie Johnson with Vocational Rehabilitation with the Department of Human Services. I've got my colleague Brittany here with me. We're going to do similar to what just happened, tell you a little bit about our program, our customers, our services, so that will give you some context into the fiscal data that Brittany will share with you. I got a clicker here. All right, so vocational rehabilitation exists to serve individuals with disabilities, helping them find the employment of their dreams. At the same time, we serve businesses, and those businesses are just entities that want to diversify their workforce with qualified candidates. In vocational rehabilitation, we served over 10,000 customers this quarter. Students that we served were over 20,000, so all in all, we touched more than 31,000 lives. Whoops. I think I skipped way ahead there. So let's talk a little bit about the services that we provide. They're person-centered, they're individualized services. And we looked at the top 5 services for this quarter. Those are listed there. I'm trying to hurry also because I know we're short on time. The services that we provide to students, they're done in partnership with the school system. We also have agency providers who see students in the school setting. We have 5 different services that we provided. Over 33,000 services were provided this quarter to students. Some of those are listed here, and I'll give you some examples that kind of are a little bit more meaningful. Things like job exploration counseling, that's career speakers may come to the school and talk with students. Post-secondary counseling, we talk about college, life after school, maybe some technical programming that could happen. Workplace readiness training, that's your soft skills, social skills, independent living skills, things like that. And then self-advocacy, it's self-awareness, decision-making, and disability disclosure. So then we've got a little bit about customers that we serve. One of the, I think the things about vocational rehabilitation, we have a lot of diversity in disability. And so some departments, some programs serve only individuals with a specific type of disability, maybe intellectual disability or mental health conditions. But for our program, we serve a variety of disabilities. And these are the most common ones that we had for this quarter. Like psychosocial, that's when someone with a mental illness or mental health condition interacts with a social environment that causes a barrier. Also physical disability, visual disability, and hearing and communication related. I think I've just hit this button a little too fast here. Trying to hurry. Okay. So next we'll talk about our employment outcomes. Our goal is to make sure that people end up with employment in competitive and integrated settings. We are at about 303 for this quarter. That is a little bit lower than where we were last year, but as you see, our numbers are continuing to grow. Lastly, the other part of the customers that we serve are our business customers. We hope to form partnerships with businesses. And the most common probably service that we provide is disability etiquette training. We interacted with 81 new businesses this quarter, and we served over 1,000 businesses. And next, I'll hand it over to Brittany to talk about some fiscal data. Be careful with that button, it'll touch you.
All right, thank you. So diving into the finances, we have at the top on a state fiscal year for 23, we have our total funding allocation broken out by federal, state, local gov, and other funding. Our total is $98.9 million. And then we also go into our expenditures that break out our expenditures by VR at 49.9, and our pre-ETS transition services, which are services for students with disabilities ages 14 to 22 who are eligible or potentially eligible for VR services. That total comes to $53.8 million, making our net position $45.1. So here in the presentation, I'm going to address the 1/3 page of footnotes. That is really, really important to understand that these figures aren't really describing, and it's circling around how we receive our grant funding. So for VR, our budget allocations operate on a state fiscal year, while our grant award operates on a federal fiscal year. That grant award also has the ability to carry forward into a second year if certain requirements are met. So that's a key component you're not going to find within these numbers that are being presented. In addition, we have 3 main requirements tied to those federal funds. Our first requirement is a 21.3% match that we must provide in order to even draw down our funds. In addition, with that state match component, we have a maintenance effort that requires our agency to continuously provide the same amount of non-federal share in 2 years prior, which is kind of complicated. Usually that requirement is a year-over-year, but we have to do it every 2 years. And then lastly, we have our PREET's employment transition services requirement, which indicates that we must put aside 15% of our final federal award and use those funds towards our PREET's services. Our last slide here is breaking out our expenditures into a little more detail. We have our program admin at $37.3 million. This includes our salaries, benefits. This includes our leases and utilities for buildings across the state. This also includes some contracts for case management services and some of our costs for workforce development. Next, we have we've broken out our contracts for direct services to our customers at 5.8. And then the goods and non-contracted services is at 10.6. And these expenditures come directly out of our case management system, which our counselors authorize vendors throughout the state to provide direct services to our participants. So we've gone ahead and added a little piece for total direct services received by our customers, and that total is 16.4. And it's important to note that these are non-administrative dollars. These are for employment services, and they serve both VR and PREET's participants. So that concludes our slides for today, but I do want to thank you all for allowing us to present these figures and our data from a VR program lens. Are there any questions for us?
Yeah, what questions would you have for Brittany or Julie?
I do have one question. Do individuals on the autism spectrum disorder fall under VR?
Yes, that's definitely a disability we serve.
And then, just so I'm clarifying your page of footnotes, if I were to say it differently, it looks like you're not spending all the money that you have available to you, but in fact, it's because of the fiscal year overlap of the federal fiscal and the state fiscal combined with the restrictions that the federal puts on their grants. Is that fair?
That's correct. And we have the ability to carry those funds into a second year. So there's a lot of restrictions, and then there's a lot of program planning that comes into play as we start serving more individuals. We have to make sure that we're going to be meeting those requirements. Otherwise, there's potentially a financial penalty that comes.
So when Ivan puts all the list of programs in one sheet where it looks like most people are spending, 80, 90, 95% of their funds, and it gets down to you and it looks like, it's 50%, that's not an accurate comparison, right? It's more of an apples to oranges comparison because of the way yours is set up.
Yes, that we don't necessarily fit the mold as our other partners, and I think that's our approach with providing this information.
So just from a board perspective, when you see that, that's the lens in which you should compare. Okay. Any other questions? Very good. Thank you for your time and good presentation. Glad to see the good work you're doing. Okay. I think we've hit all of our talking points and topics today. So just want to make a couple of reminders. Our next meeting is scheduled for August 25th, so please make sure your calendars are prepared for that. We'll probably also be looking to tag on a strategy meeting for this board at some point this fall, so keep that in mind. And a reminder to watch for that email from Eiler on Monday, and hopefully you'll be interested in signing up for one of the task force options that you'll have before you. All right, anything else before we adjourn? Do I hear a motion to adjourn? All right, thank you. A second? Got it. Thanks, Kevin. I don't think anybody's opposed to that, so we'll say that the meeting is adjourned, and thank you for your time.